Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars bend and twist through the viewport as his ship moved through quantum space at speeds that should have been impossible according to every physics textbook in the known galaxy. The quantum entanglement drive hummed softly beneath the deck plates, a sound that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat over the past 3 years of testing and development. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker called out from her station, without looking up from the cascade of data flowing across her screens. "Captain, we're approaching the exit coordinates. Quantum tunnel collapse in 30 seconds. Her voice carried the easy confidence of someone who had helped design every component of the revolutionary drive system that powered their ship. Communications Officer Matt Rodriguez adjusted his headset and ran through the translation protocols. One more time. The Galactic Council had provided detailed linguistic data along with their invitation, but first contact situations were always unpredictable. He had spent weeks memorizing the basic diplomatic phrases in 17 different alien languages, though he suspected the universal translators would handle most of the heavy lifting. The invitation had arrived at Earth 57 days ago, transmitted on frequencies that humanity's deep space monitoring stations had never detected before. The message had been simple and direct, written in perfect English that somehow felt slightly off, as if translated by someone who understood the words, but not quite their emotional weight. The Galactic Council welcomed humanity to join the community of spacefaring civilizations and requested that Earth send representatives to the designated coordinates in the Alpha Centauri system for formal first contact proceedings. What the Council expected, based on their careful observations of human radio transmissions and primitive space exploration efforts, was a delegation arriving in chemical-powered rockets sometime within the next several decades. The journey from Earth to Alpha Centauri using conventional propulsion would take the better part of a century, even with the most optimistic projections of human technological development. What they were getting instead was humanity arriving, exactly 3 days after receiving the invitation. Admiral Kate Williams had made the decision personally after consulting with Earth's top scientists and military leaders. The quantum entanglement drive had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for the past 5 years, developed in underground laboratories beneath the Nevada desert by teams of physicists who had sworn oaths of silence that carried life imprisonment as the penalty for violation. The technology represented such a massive leap forward in human capabilities that world leaders had agreed it should remain classified until they better understood its implications. But first contact with an advanced galactic civilization changed everything. If humanity was going to take its place among the stars, Admiral Williams had argued, they needed to do so from a position of strength rather than as primitive newcomers begging for scraps of advanced technology. The quantum drive would serve as humanity's calling card, proof that Earth's inhabitants were worthy of respect and equal treatment. The USS Horizon shuddered slightly as it dropped out of quantum space back into normal space-time. The stars stopped their impossible dance and settled into familiar patterns, though the constellations looked strange and foreign so far from Earth. Directly ahead, silhouetted against the golden light of Alpha Centauri A, hung the most magnificent artificial structure any human had ever seen. The Galactic Council Station stretched across nearly 100 kilometers of space, a gleaming mixture of crystalline spires and flowing metallic curves that seemed to shift and change as the light played across its surface. Docking bays large enough to accommodate ships the size of city blocks dotted its hull, while communication arrays that looked like frozen lightning reached out toward the stars. The entire structure pulsed with a soft blue light that spoke of energy sources beyond human understanding. Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's science officer, whistled softly as her sensors began cataloging the station's impossible dimensions. "Captain, I'm reading power signatures that are off the charts. Whatever they're using for energy production, it makes our fusion reactors look like campfires." Captain Morrison nodded, though his attention was focused on the tactical display. where Commander Beth Taylor was tracking the dozens of alien vessels moving around the station. Ships of every conceivable design floated in perfect formation, from sleek, dart-shaped scouts that seemed to be made of living metal to massive cargo haulers that looked like they had been grown rather than built. None of them moved in ways that suggested they were bound by the same physical laws that governed human spacecraft. "Captain," Matt Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement and nervousness. "I'm receiving a communication from the station. They're requesting our approach vector and, sir, they seem surprised that we're here already." The communication that followed would later be studied by xenolinguistics experts for years. The alien voice that came through the speakers spoke perfect English, but with an undertone of shock that the universal translators couldn't quite mask. "Human vessel USS Horizon, this is Council Station Control. Please confirm your identity and method of arrival. Our records indicate that your species was not expected to achieve interstellar capability for several more decades." Captain Morrison exchanged glances with his senior staff, seeing his own mixture of pride and apprehension reflected in their faces. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. He activated the communication system and spoke the words that would echo through history. "Council Station Control, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth vessel USS Horizon. We received your invitation and came as quickly as we could. We're here to represent humanity in formal first contact proceedings with the Galactic Council." The silence that followed lasted exactly 4.7 seconds, though it felt like an eternity to everyone on the bridge. When the response finally came, it carried an undertone that would haunt the dreams of council leaders for months to come. "USS Horizon, you are cleared for Docking Bay 17. Welcome to the galaxy." Council Prime Director Zethkar had overseen first contact proceedings with 47 different species during his 3-century career, and he thought he had seen every possible variation of how a newly spacefaring civilization might present itself to the galactic community. Some arrived with primitive chemical rockets, barely capable of reaching their own system's edge. Others came in generation ships that had taken thousands of years to cross the void between stars. A few rare species managed to develop basic faster-than-light drives before making contact, usually crude wormhole generators or dimensional fold systems that required massive energy expenditures and could only manage short jumps. None had ever arrived faster than their own light-speed communications. Dr. Helen Brooks stood at the center of the council's main assembly chamber, a vast, spherical room where representatives from hundreds of different species floated, sat, or hung in environmental pods suited to their particular biological needs. The human delegation had been invited to present an overview of their technological development, a standard part of first contact protocols that usually involved modest demonstrations of chemical rockets and basic nuclear technology. Instead, Dr. Brooks was preparing to explain how humanity had solved what the Council considered to be the fundamental barrier to true galactic civilization. Our quantum entanglement drive operates on principles that our physicists discovered quite by accident during experiments with paired particle systems, Dr. Brooks began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Holographic displays materialized around her, showing three-dimensional models of subatomic interactions that made several council members lean forward with intense interest. "We found that when quantum particles are entangled and then separated by vast distances, they maintain an instantaneous connection that appears to operate outside the normal constraints of space-time," she continued, manipulating the holographic models to demonstrate the concept. "Our breakthrough came when we realized that this connection could be artificially sustained and amplified on a macroscopic scale." Elder Vorthak of the Mechanical Consensus, a towering figure whose body was more machine than organic matter, activated his translation protocols and spoke in tones that resonated through the chamber like struck metal. "Dr. Brooks, you describe manipulating quantum entanglement on scales that our greatest physicists have proven to be impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of most stellar cores. Engineer Tony Garcia stepped forward. From the human delegation, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the formal posture of most council representatives. Elder Vorthak, that's where human engineering differs from what we've seen in your technical databases. We don't fight physics. We find ways around it. The energy requirements you're thinking of assume you're trying to force particles to maintain entanglement against their natural tendency to decohere. We discovered that if you create the right kind of quantum field matrix, the particles actually want to stay connected. The silence that followed Tony's explanation was unlike anything Zethkar had experienced in 3 centuries of diplomatic service. It wasn't the polite quiet of beings processing new information, but the stunned silence of minds trying to grasp something that violated their fundamental understanding of reality. High physicist Quental of the Ethereal Collective, whose species had spent 8,000 years developing their current fold-space drives, projected a question through the chamber's psionic translation network. Human Garcia, are you suggesting that your species has developed a method of instantaneous travel that requires no exotic matter, no dimensional manipulation, and no massive infrastructure? That's exactly what we're saying, Dr. Brooks replied, bringing up a new set of holographic displays that showed the USS Horizon's drive system in detail. Our quantum tunnel generators are small enough to fit inside a standard starship, efficient enough to operate on fusion power, and capable of creating stable wormholes between any 2 points where we've established quantum beacons. The chamber erupted in what the translation systems could only render as confused shouting in dozens of different languages. Species that had spent millennia developing faster-than-light technology were confronting the reality that a newcomer species had somehow leapfrogged over thousands of years of gradual technological advancement. Science coordinator Plaxis, whose crystalline form normally pulsed with calm blue light, was now strobing through colors that indicated extreme agitation. The implications of what you describe are staggering. If your quantum drive technology functions as you claim, it would revolutionize galactic civilization. Travel times between any 2 points in the galaxy could be reduced from years to hours. Captain Morrison, who had remained quietly observant during the technical presentations, finally spoke up. Coordinator Plaxis, that's exactly what we're hoping for. Earth's government sent us here not just to join galactic civilization, but to contribute to it. We're prepared to share our quantum drive technology with any species willing to enter into peaceful alliances with humanity. The offer hung in the chamber's recycled atmosphere like a physical presence. Civilizations that had built their entire economies around the slow, expensive reality of conventional faster-than-light travel were suddenly facing the possibility of a transportation revolution that would make their massive infrastructure investments obsolete overnight. Elder Zixtan of the Ancient Minds, whose species had been among the founders of the Galactic Council 40,000 years ago, spoke in tones so low that the translation systems had to amplify them for other species to hear. Young humans, you offer to share technology that our greatest scientists insist cannot exist. Yet here you stand, having traveled from your homeworld in mere days, using drives that our physics declares impossible. How do we reconcile this contradiction, Doctor? Brooks smiled, an expression that the various alien species were still learning to interpret. Elder Zixtan, perhaps the contradiction isn't with our technology, but with the assumptions underlying your physics. Human science developed in isolation from galactic knowledge, which meant we had to figure everything out from scratch. We didn't know that certain things were supposed to be impossible, so we found ways to make them possible anyway. Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had been quietly recording the proceedings for Earth's scientists, stepped forward with a small device that she activated with a simple gesture. The device projected a 3-dimensional map of local space that showed the locations of quantum beacons that humanity had already established throughout their home system. This is our current beacon network, she explained. 12 quantum anchors, positioned at strategic points throughout the Sol system, connected by stable entanglement channels that allow instantaneous travel between any 2 points. We can expand this network to any location we visit, effectively creating a galactic transportation grid that operates at the speed of thought. The implications crashed through the chamber like a shockwave. Species that controlled strategic hyperspace, routes because of their locations along conventional faster-than-light corridors, realized that their geographical advantages would become meaningless in a galaxy where every system could be connected directly to every other system. Military strategists who had built their doctrines around the predictable travel times of existing FTL technology faced the reality that humanity could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Council Prime Director Zethkar looked around. The chamber at representatives whose expressions ranged from wonder to terror, and realized that this first contact was unlike any other in galactic history. Humanity hadn't come seeking guidance or requesting permission to join galactic civilization. They had come offering to revolutionize it. High Counselor Nemtha paced the length of the secure chamber where the Council's leadership had retreated after the human technological demonstration, her elegant form moving with the restless energy of a predator suddenly realizing it might have become prey. The chamber itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, its walls lined with quantum-encrypted communication nodes that allowed the assembled representatives to speak freely without fear of surveillance. But even this sanctuary felt inadequate in the face of what they had just witnessed. In 40,000 years of recorded galactic civilization, no species has achieved true instantaneous travel, she stated, her melodic voice carrying undertones that the universal translators rendered as barely controlled fear. The ethereal collective required 8 millennia of gradual development to perfect their fold space drives, and even then, their technology demands massive stellar-scale energy collectors and can only function along predetermined dimensional corridors. Elder Vorthak's mechanical components whirred and clicked as he processed data streams from the mechanical consensus's vast computational networks. High Counselor, our preliminary analysis of the human technical specifications suggests that their claims are not only possible but conservative. If their quantum entanglement matrices function as described, they have effectively eliminated the distance barrier that has defined galactic politics since the first interstellar civilizations arose. Science Coordinator Plaxis projected holographic displays that showed humanity's technological progression based on data gathered from decades of passive observation. The timeline was staggering in its brevity compared to the development cycles of established galactic species. According to our deep space monitoring stations, this species achieved controlled nuclear fission only 80 years ago. They developed chemical spaceflight a mere 60 years past, and their first ventures beyond their homeworld's atmosphere began less than a century ago. Yet they arrive here with technology that surpasses the greatest achievements of civilizations that have been spacefaring for millennia. Defense Coordinator Kethmore, whose species had evolved from apex predators and retained their ancestors' instinctive understanding of threat assessment, stood rigid with tension as he reviewed the tactical implications. The strategic defense. Council has run preliminary scenarios based on the human capabilities we observed today. The results are disturbing. A species that can appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, using technology that requires no massive infrastructure and leaves no detectable signatures, represents a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Admiral Steve Carson, representing Earth's military interests, remained completely unaware of the panic his presence had triggered among the galactic leadership. During a casual conversation with his aide, Lieutenant Amy Foster, he had mentioned that the journey from Earth to the Alpha Centauri system had taken only 18 hours, including a scheduled stop at humanity's Mars research station to collect additional scientific data and a brief detour to check on their asteroid mining operations in the belt. The implications of those offhand comments had sent shockwaves through every intelligence agency in galactic space. Humanity wasn't just capable of interstellar travel, they had developed their quantum drive technology to such a degree that routine trips between planets in their home system were faster than most species could manage travel between cities on their homeworlds. Elder Zixtan, whose ancient minds had been instrumental in establishing the fundamental principles of galactic law, spoke in tones so low that the chamber's acoustic systems had to amplify them. We are confronting a scenario that our legal frameworks never anticipated. The entire structure of galactic civilization has been built around the assumption that faster-than-light travel requires massive investments in infrastructure, energy, and time. Hyperspace routes, dimensional fold corridors, and wormhole networks have become the highways of galactic commerce precisely because they represent predictable, controllable pathways between star systems. High physicist Quental's ethereal form flickered with patterns of light that indicated deep contemplation, mixed with growing alarm. Humans have effectively made our entire transportation infrastructure obsolete. Why would anyone pay for passage through our carefully maintained hyperspace corridors when they could travel instantly between any 2 points using human quantum beacon networks? Why would civilizations invest in the massive energy requirements of fold space drives when human technology can accomplish the same results using power sources that fit inside a single starship? The economic implications were staggering. Species that had built their entire economies around controlling strategic travel routes faced the prospect of becoming irrelevant overnight. The Titan Federation's massive wormhole generators, each one a monument to engineering prowess that had taken centuries to construct, would become expensive relics in a galaxy where humans could establish quantum tunnels in a matter of hours. But the economic concerns paled beside the security implications that were becoming increasingly clear as the Council leadership analyzed the human technological demonstration. Defense Coordinator Kethmore brought up tactical displays that showed the current distribution of galactic military forces, carefully positioned to control key hyperspace junctions and defend against conventional faster-than-light attacks. Our entire military doctrine is based on the predictability of existing FTL technology, he explained, highlighting the strategic choke points that had defined galactic warfare for millennia. We know where enemy fleets can emerge from hyperspace. We understand the energy signatures that precede dimensional fold operations, and we can track wormhole generators by their massive power requirements. Human quantum drive technology makes all of these defensive measures useless. The silence that followed was broken by High Counselor Nemtha's voice, now carrying undertones that the translators rendered as existential dread. We are facing a species that has independently developed technology that makes them effectively ungovernable by galactic law, uncontainable by galactic security forces, and potentially unstoppable by any military response we could mount. Elder Vorthak's optical sensors focused on the data streams flowing through his consciousness, processing calculations that would have required entire planets' worth of computational power for organic minds to comprehend. The humans demonstrated their quantum tunnel technology using small-scale laboratory equipment. If they can scale this technology up to industrial levels, they could establish permanent transportation networks that span the entire galaxy. Every human colony, every human outpost, every human vessel could be connected by instantaneous communication and transportation links. Science Coordinator Plaxis generated new holographic projections that showed potential human expansion patterns based on their technological capabilities. The models were terrifying in their implications, showing how a species with instantaneous travel could colonize and develop entire sectors of the galaxy in time frames that other civilizations would require for single-system exploration. They could establish colonies in the galactic rim territories that are currently unreachable by conventional FTL technology, Plaxis observed, his crystalline form pulsing with patterns that indicated profound unease. They could set up research stations in the galactic core regions where the gravitational distortions make normal, faster-than-light travel impossible. They could explore the spaces between galactic arms where the distances are so vast that even our fastest ships would require millennia to make the journey. Defense Coordinator Kethmore brought up the most disturbing possibility of all, one that had been haunting the nightmares of galactic strategists since the human demonstration had concluded. If they can create quantum tunnels for peaceful transportation, they can create quantum tunnels for military applications. Imagine human weapons appearing inside enemy ship hulls, human troops materializing in the heart of defended installations, human fleets emerging without warning in the midst of our most secure space. The chamber fell into a silence so profound that the environmental systems seemed unnaturally loud. The assembled representatives of galactic civilization, beings whose species had conquered stars and reshaped entire worlds, found themselves confronting the reality that a newcomer species from a tiny yellow star had just rewritten the fundamental rules of existence in space. High Counselor Nemtha finally spoke, her voice carrying the weight of civilizations that suddenly found themselves obsolete. The age of gradual galactic expansion, of predictable travel times, of controllable strategic resources has ended. The humans have brought us into a new era, whether we wanted it or not. Dr. Ray Patterson stood before the assembled members of the Council's Science Division in a chamber that had been specifically designed to accommodate the vast range of environmental requirements needed by the galaxy's most brilliant minds. The xenobiologist had been invited to present an overview of human biological development, what the Council assumed would be a routine examination of another carbon-based species with standard evolutionary patterns. Instead, what he revealed sent new waves of shock through beings who thought they had already reached their maximum capacity for surprise. Human beings evolved under what we now understand to be highly unusual circumstances, Dr. Patterson began, activating holographic displays that showed Earth's unique position in the galaxy and the specific conditions that had shaped human development. Our homeworld orbits a relatively young star in a region of space with higher than average background radiation levels, while our planet's unusually strong magnetic field and large moon created gravitational and electromagnetic conditions that are quite rare among habitable worlds. Senior biologist Vexathon of the Organic Collective, whose species had spent millennia cataloging evolutionary patterns across the galaxy, studied the data with growing fascination. Dr. Patterson, the radiation exposure levels you describe should have been detrimental to organic development. Most species that evolve under such conditions develop enhanced resistance to genetic damage, but at the cost of slower neurological development and reduced cognitive flexibility. That's where human evolution took an interesting turn, Dr. Patterson replied, bringing up detailed brain scans that showed the complex neural architecture that had emerged in human minds. Instead of developing radiation resistance through biological hardening, humans evolved enhanced DNA repair mechanisms and redundant neural pathways that allowed us to not only survive the high-energy environment, but actually benefit from it. The constant low-level genetic stress forced our brains to develop exceptional pattern recognition abilities and adaptive problem-solving skills. The implications of this revelation rippled through the assembled scientists like a shockwave. Species across the galaxy had evolved under relatively stable conditions that promoted gradual, predictable development patterns. The idea that environmental stress could actually enhance cognitive development rather than limiting it challenged fundamental assumptions about how intelligence emerged in organic systems. Cognitive specialist Plexer, whose crystalline neural networks had been designed to process information with mathematical precision, projected questions that resonated through the chamber's psionic communication grid. Human Patterson, are you suggesting that your species' cognitive architecture operates according to principles that differ fundamentally from established models of organic intelligence? We're discovering that human thinking patterns are quite different from what we're seeing in galactic databases, Dr. Patterson confirmed, displaying comparative neural activity scans that showed how human brains processed information. Where most species appear to develop specialized cognitive modules for specific types of problems, humans evolved with highly integrated neural networks that can rapidly form new connections and adapt to novel situations. We call it lateral thinking, the ability to approach problems from unexpected angles and find solutions that don't follow conventional logical pathways. Commander Beth Taylor had been invited to provide a routine briefing on human military capabilities to the Council's Security Division, what should have been a straightforward presentation of primitive weapons systems and basic defensive strategies. Instead, her casual responses to standard security questions revealed information that sent Council military analysts into emergency session. "Theoretical weapons applications?" asked Security Prime Kethmore, when the topic of human quantum drive technology came up during routine threat assessment protocols. "Well, if you can create quantum tunnels for peaceful transportation, you can obviously create quantum tunnels for other purposes," Commander Taylor replied, with the characteristic human directness that was already becoming familiar to Council representatives. "You could theoretically transport kinetic projectiles directly into enemy ships, establish quantum links that allow for instantaneous tactical communication across galactic distances, or even create localized space-time distortions that could disrupt enemy FTL capabilities." The security implications of these casual observations hit the Council's military leadership like a physical blow. Human weapons technology, developed in complete isolation from galactic influence, had apparently evolved along paths that no established civilization had ever considered. The ability to deliver weapons through quantum tunnels meant that traditional defensive strategies based on armor, shields, and point defense systems would be completely useless. "But we're not really interested in military applications," Commander Taylor continued, seemingly unaware of the panic she was causing among galactic security analysts. "Earth's government decided long ago that our quantum drive technology should be used for exploration and peaceful contact with other civilizations. We're here to learn and make friends, not to threaten anyone." The innocuous nature of her statement somehow made it even more terrifying to beings who understood that a species capable of such devastating weapons applications could choose not to develop them only from a position of supreme confidence in their own security. Dr. Kevin Moore, Earth's chief science advisor, had been invited to participate in technical discussions with the Council's engineering consortium, sharing information about human manufacturing and construction techniques. What he revealed about humanity's approach to large-scale engineering projects challenged every assumption the galaxy's greatest builders had made about the relationship between technology and infrastructure. "Our quantum beacon network allows us to treat interplanetary distances the same way previous generations treated intercity transportation," Dr. Moore explained to an audience of beings whose species had spent centuries learning to build massive structures in space. "We can establish manufacturing facilities on airless worlds and transport materials instantly to construction sites light years away. We can mine resources from asteroid belts and deliver them to shipyards in other star systems without the massive cargo fleets that most civilizations require." Master Engineer Tholvar of the Constructor Guild, whose people had built some of the galaxy's most impressive megastructures, found himself struggling to comprehend the implications. "Dr. Moore, you describe construction techniques that eliminate the logistical limitations that have defined large-scale engineering for millennia. If materials and personnel can be transported instantly across interstellar distances, the scale of projects you could undertake would be limited only by available resources, not by transportation costs." "Exactly," Dr. Moore replied, bringing up holographic displays that showed human plans for expanding their industrial base throughout the Sol system. "We're currently establishing automated mining operations throughout our asteroid belt, with quantum tunnels connecting each facility to our main construction yards. Within the next decade, we expect to have the industrial capacity to build fleets of quantum-capable vessels and establish permanent colonies throughout local space." The timeline he described sent shockwaves through beings whose civilizations required centuries to establish single interstellar colonies. Humans were planning to colonize entire sectors of space in time frames that other species would need for basic planetary surveys. Emergency sessions were called throughout the council hierarchy as the full implications of human capabilities became clear. This wasn't simply a matter of advanced technology, it was a complete paradigm shift that threatened to make every existing galactic civilization obsolete. Species that had built their power on controlling trade routes, maintaining manufacturing monopolies, or dominating strategic resources faced the reality that humans could simply bypass all of these traditional sources of influence. High Counselor. Nemtha convened an emergency meeting of the council's senior leadership, her voice carrying undertones of barely controlled panic. We are not dealing with a primitive species that happens to have stumbled upon advanced technology. We are confronting a civilization that thinks about problems in ways that our greatest minds never considered, that approaches engineering challenges from angles that our most experienced builders never imagined, and that has developed capabilities that make our accumulated advantages meaningless. The assembled representatives sat in stunned silence as the reality of their situation became undeniably clear. Humanity had not come to join galactic civilization as junior partners seeking guidance and protection. They had arrived as the architects of a new galactic order, one that would be built around human technology, human thinking, and human capabilities. The age of established galactic powers was ending, whether they were ready or not. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had begun to reshape itself around the reality of human quantum drive technology, though not always in ways that the established powers had anticipated or desired. Captain Lucy Adams stood on the bridge of the USS Discovery, humanity's second quantum-capable vessel, as her ship emerged from quantum space near the Council station with news that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in galactic civilization. The Discovery represented the next generation of human starship design, built specifically to take advantage of lessons learned during the Horizon's initial contact mission. Where the Horizon had been designed primarily as an exploration vessel, the Discovery was equipped with advanced quantum beacon deployment systems that could establish permanent transportation networks in a matter of hours rather than days. Captain, Communications Officer Carl Johnson called out from his station. "We're receiving priority communication from the Council station. They're requesting immediate docking and asking about our beacon deployment mission in the Outer Rim territories." "Captain," Adams smiled, knowing that the Council's request was motivated more by anxiety than curiosity. Over the past 6 months, human exploration vessels had been systematically establishing quantum beacon networks throughout previously unreachable regions of the galaxy, opening up vast territories that had been considered too distant or dangerous for conventional colonization efforts. The docking procedures at the Council station had become routine, though Captain Adams noticed that the alien vessels in the surrounding space maintained more careful distances than they had during humanity's first visit. Word of human capabilities had spread throughout galactic civilization, and most species were still trying to determine whether humans represented an opportunity or a threat. Dr. Lisa Chen, the Discovery's senior physicist, had spent the journey from Earth preparing a presentation that would introduce the Council to humanity's latest breakthrough in quantum mechanics. The development she was about to reveal would make their previous technological demonstrations seem conservative by comparison. "Honored Council members," Dr. Chen began, as she stood before the assembled representatives in the main chamber. "Earth's research teams have achieved a significant advancement in our quantum entanglement technology. We have successfully developed what we call quantum mesh networks, systems that allow multiple quantum beacons to maintain simultaneous connections with dozens of other beacons across unlimited distances." The implications of her announcement sent ripples of excitement and terror through the assembled aliens. The quantum beacon networks that humans had demonstrated 6 months earlier had been revolutionary enough, but they had required direct point-to-point connections between individual beacons. A mesh network would allow any beacon in the system to connect instantly to any other beacon, creating a transportation grid of unprecedented flexibility and power. Elder Vorthak's mechanical components whirred with increased activity as he processed the technical specifications that Dr. Chen was displaying. Dr. Chen, you describe a network topology that would allow instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the galaxy, regardless of the physical distance or the number of intermediate connections required. That's correct, Dr. Chen replied, manipulating holographic displays that showed the expanding network of human quantum beacons throughout local space. Our current network spans 17 star systems and includes 43 active beacons, with more being added every week. Travel time between any 2 points in the network is measured in minutes, regardless of whether you're traveling from Earth to Alpha Centauri or from our outermost research stations to our core worlds. Captain Morrison, who had remained on the Council station as Earth's primary diplomatic representative, stepped forward with an announcement that had been carefully planned by humanity's leadership. The United Earth government has authorized me to extend a formal invitation to the Galactic Council to establish a permanent embassy in the Sol system. We're prepared to provide quantum beacon access that would allow Council representatives to travel instantly between Earth and this station. The offer represented more than simple diplomatic courtesy. Access to humanity's quantum network would give Council representatives the ability to experience firsthand the revolutionary impact of instantaneous interstellar travel, but it would also make them dependent on human-controlled infrastructure. For the first time in galactic history, High Counselor Nemtha considered the implications carefully before responding. Captain Morrison, such an arrangement would require unprecedented levels of trust and cooperation between our civilizations. The Council would need assurances that access to your quantum network could not be revoked arbitrarily or used as leverage in future negotiations. We understand your concerns, Captain Morrison replied, but we believe that the benefits of cooperation far outweigh the risks. Humanity is committed to sharing our quantum drive technology with any species willing to enter into peaceful alliance with Earth. We're not interested in dominating galactic civilization. We want to help it reach its full potential. The discussions that followed would later be studied by diplomatic historians as a masterclass in how a technologically superior civilization could reshape galactic politics through a combination of overwhelming capability and careful restraint. Humanity was clearly in a position to dictate terms to the rest of the galaxy, but they chose instead to present their advantages as opportunities for mutual benefit. Engineer Ben Parker, who had been instrumental in developing the quantum mesh network technology, provided technical demonstrations that left Council scientists struggling to comprehend the elegance of human engineering solutions. Our quantum tunnels don't just provide transportation, he explained. They also allow for instantaneous communication across unlimited distances. Every beacon in our network can relay information to every other beacon simultaneously, creating a galactic internet that operates at the speed of thought. The communications implications were staggering. Civilizations that had relied on slow, expensive message relay systems to maintain contact across interstellar distances suddenly faced the possibility of real-time communication with every corner of their territory. The economic and administrative advantages of such a system would be transformative for any civilization that gained access to it. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Earth's leading expert on quantum field dynamics, revealed the most ambitious aspect of humanity's long-term plans when she addressed the Council's Science Division. We're currently working on quantum beacon technology that doesn't require physical transportation to establish. Our theoretical models suggest that we can create quantum entanglement fields that propagate at faster-than-light speeds, allowing us to establish beacon networks in distant galaxies without sending ships to physically place the hardware. The prospect of intergalactic travel, something that even the most advanced Council civilizations considered to be purely theoretical, suddenly became a practical possibility. Humanity was offering not just to revolutionize transportation within the galaxy, but to open up entirely new realms of space for exploration and colonization. Security. Chief Amanda Ross provided the final piece of the puzzle when she addressed the Council's military leadership with information about humanity's defensive capabilities. Our quantum beacon networks provide more than just transportation advantages, she explained, bringing up tactical displays that showed how human defensive systems operated. Any hostile force that threatens human territory or our allies can be met with instant response from anywhere in our network. We can deploy defensive fleets, humanitarian aid, or diplomatic support to any crisis point in the galaxy within minutes of receiving a request for assistance. The military implications were clear to every being in the chamber. Humanity had effectively made the galaxy smaller, not just in terms of travel time, but in terms of response time to any emergency or threat. Traditional military strategies based on the assumption that reinforcements would take months or years to arrive had become obsolete overnight. Council Prime Director Zeth Carr found himself facing a decision that would define galactic civilization for millennia to come. Humanity was offering to share technology that would revolutionize every aspect of interstellar society. But accepting that offer would mean acknowledging that the age of human dominance had begun. "Captain Morrison," he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of 40,000 years of galactic history, "the Council accepts Earth's invitation to establish diplomatic relations and requests immediate access to your quantum beacon network for essential personnel transport." The words marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The galaxy would never again be limited by the slow, expensive reality of conventional, faster-than-light travel. Humanity had offered the stars, themselves as a gift to galactic civilization, and the Council had accepted. The age of quantum civilization had begun. 1 year after humanity's arrival at the Council Station, the galaxy had begun to transform in ways that even the most optimistic human planners had never anticipated. The USS Enterprise, the third vessel in Earth's rapidly expanding quantum fleet, materialized near the Council Station carrying news that would accelerate the pace of change throughout galactic civilization. Commander Rick Thompson stood on the bridge, watching as dozens of alien vessels moved through space using quantum beacon networks that had been established through cooperative agreements between Earth and various Council member species. The sight still amazed him, even after months of witnessing the transformation that human technology was bringing to interstellar travel. "Commander," Science Officer Jane Williams called out from her station, "I'm detecting quantum signatures from at least 40 different beacon networks operating in this system. The traffic volume has increased by over 300% since our last visit. The numbers reflected a galaxy in the midst of revolutionary change. Species that had previously required months or years to establish diplomatic contact were now able to send delegations back and forth between their homeworlds in a matter of hours. Trade agreements that had taken decades to negotiate because of communication delays were being finalized in weeks. Military alliances that had been impossible to coordinate across galactic distances were forming with unprecedented speed. Dr. Mark Davis, Earth's newly appointed Director of Galactic Technology Integration, had been invited to address the Council's Economic Development Division about the impact of quantum drive technology on interstellar commerce. What he revealed demonstrated that humanity's gift to the galaxy was transforming civilization in ways that went far beyond simple transportation improvements. The establishment of quantum beacon networks throughout Council space has eliminated the distance penalty that has historically limited interstellar trade, Dr. Davis explained to an audience of beings whose civilizations were scrambling to adapt to new economic realities. Goods can now be transported instantly between star systems that are thousands of light years apart, making it economically viable to specialize in resource extraction, manufacturing, or research without regard to local market limitations. Trade. Coordinator Bextal of the Commercial Federation found herself struggling to comprehend the implications of what Dr. Davis was describing. Her species had built their entire economy around controlling strategic trade routes between major industrial centers, but quantum beacon networks were making geographical advantages irrelevant. "Dr. Davis," she asked, her voice carrying undertones of barely controlled panic, "are you suggesting that our traditional shipping networks and trade route monopolies have become obsolete?" "Not obsolete," Dr. Davis replied diplomatically, "but certainly transformed. The quantum network eliminates the transportation costs that have historically made long-distance trade expensive, but it also creates new opportunities for civilizations that can adapt quickly to changed circumstances." The adaptation process was already underway throughout Council space, though not always smoothly. Species that had spent millennia developing massive cargo fleets were discovering that their investments in conventional transportation infrastructure had lost most of their value overnight. Civilizations that controlled strategic hyperspace routes were finding that their geographical advantages meant nothing in a galaxy where every system could be connected directly to every other system. Captain Ellen Foster, commanding the USS, venture on humanity's first large-scale colonization mission beyond the local group, provided an update that demonstrated the breathtaking pace of human expansion into previously unreachable regions of the galaxy. "We've successfully established quantum beacon networks in 12 star systems in the Outer Rim territories," she reported to the assembled Council leadership. Each system contains multiple habitable worlds that had been considered too distant for conventional colonization efforts. The colonization timeline she described was staggering compared to the expansion patterns of established galactic civilizations. Humans were establishing permanent settlements in regions of space that other species had barely begun to explore, using quantum beacon networks to maintain instant communication and transportation links with Earth across distances that would have required centuries of travel using conventional FTL technology. Engineering Chief Paul Rodriguez revealed the scope of humanity's industrial expansion when he addressed the Council's Infrastructure Development Committee. "Our quantum-enabled manufacturing networks now span over 50 star systems," he explained, displaying holographic maps that showed the vast scale of human industrial operations. "We can mine raw materials in one system, process them in specialized facilities in another system, and deliver finished products to markets in entirely different regions of the galaxy." The industrial implications were revolutionary. Traditional manufacturing had been limited by the massive costs of transporting raw materials and finished goods across interstellar distances, forcing civilizations to concentrate their production facilities near resource deposits or consumer markets. Human quantum networks eliminated these constraints entirely, allowing for unprecedented specialization and efficiency in galactic manufacturing. High physicist Quen Tal of the Ethereal Collective had been tasked with analyzing the broader implications of quantum network technology for galactic civilization. Her report to the Council's Strategic Planning Division revealed changes that went far beyond economics and industry. The availability of instantaneous interstellar communication is transforming the fundamental nature of galactic governance, she explained, projecting data that showed communication patterns across Council space. Civilizations that previously required months or years to coordinate policy decisions between distant colonies can now maintain real-time contact with every outpost in their territory. The governance implications were profound. Multi-system civilizations that had been forced to grant substantial autonomy to distant colonies because of communication delays were discovering that they could now maintain centralized control across unlimited distances. The political structures that had evolved to accommodate the realities of slower-than-light communication were being rapidly replaced by new forms of government that took advantage of instantaneous contact between all parts of their territory. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's specialist in xenocultural studies, provided insights into the social changes that were rippling through galactic civilization as a result of quantum beacon networks. We're observing unprecedented levels of cultural exchange between species that had previously maintained only limited contact, she reported to the Council's Cultural Development Division. Artists, scientists, and philosophers can now travel instantly between civilizations, leading to collaborative projects that would have been impossible under previous transportation limitations. The cultural renaissance that was emerging from increased contact between galactic civilizations was transforming art, science, and philosophy throughout council space. Species that had developed their intellectual traditions in isolation were suddenly exposed to entirely different ways of thinking about fundamental questions, leading to breakthroughs in fields ranging from theoretical physics to abstract art. Admiral Tom Watson, representing Earth's expanding military presence in galactic affairs, addressed the Council's Defense Committee with information about humanity's role in maintaining security throughout the rapidly changing galaxy. Human quantum networks provide unprecedented capabilities for rapid response to security threats, he explained, displaying tactical scenarios that showed how human forces could deploy anywhere in the galaxy within minutes of receiving a distress call. The security implications were transforming galactic politics in ways that traditional military strategists were still struggling to understand. The ability to project force instantly across unlimited distances meant that small conflicts could be contained before they escalated into major wars, but it also meant that any civilization with access to quantum networks could potentially threaten any other civilization regardless of distance or defensive preparations. Council Prime Director Zethkar found himself presiding over a galaxy that was changing more rapidly than at any time in recorded history. The careful balance of power that had maintained stability for thousands of years was being replaced by a new order centered around human technology and human capabilities. The integration of quantum beacon networks into galactic civilization has proceeded faster than our most optimistic projections, he announced to the assembled council representatives. We are witnessing the emergence of a truly unified galactic community for the first time in 40,000 years of recorded history. The transformation was accelerating with each passing month as more species gained access to quantum networks and began to adapt their civilizations to the possibilities of instantaneous interstellar travel. The galaxy was becoming smaller, more connected, and more dynamic than anyone had imagined possible. But with these changes came new challenges that no civilization had ever faced before. Questions about governance, economics, and security in a galaxy where distance no longer provided protection and traditional. 2 years after first contact, the fundamental structure of galactic civilization had been completely transformed, and the established powers were beginning to understand that they were no longer the ones making the important decisions. The USS Constitution arrived at the Council Station carrying representatives from Earth's newly formed Department of Galactic Affairs, along with news that would make it clear to everyone that humanity had moved beyond offering partnership to actively reshaping the galaxy according to their own vision. Secretary of Galactic Affairs Laura Mitchell stepped onto the council station, accompanied by a delegation that included some of Earth's most influential leaders in science, industry, and military affairs. The human presence at the station had grown dramatically over the past 2 years, with permanent diplomatic facilities, research laboratories, and coordination centers that made it clear that Earth considered the council station to be as much a human facility as an alien one. The United Earth Government has completed our analysis of galactic civilization's adaptation to quantum beacon technology, Secretary Mitchell announced to the assembled council leadership, and we have developed proposals for the next phase of technological integration that will address the inefficiencies and limitations that are currently constraining galactic development. The language of her announcement was diplomatically phrased, but the underlying message was unmistakable. Humanity was no longer asking for permission or seeking approval for their actions. They were informing the galaxy about decisions that had already been made in Earth's corridors of power. Dr. Kevin Johnson, Earth's Director of Quantum Research, revealed the next breakthrough that would further cement human dominance over galactic transportation. Our research teams have successfully developed quantum beacon technology that can be deployed remotely using quantum-entangled probe systems, he explained, displaying technical specifications that left council scientists stunned. We can now establish beacon networks in any star system without requiring physical visits by crewed vessels. The implications were staggering. The last advantage that established galactic civilizations had possessed was their existing presence in distant star systems, which had allowed them to negotiate partnerships with humanity for beacon placement in their territory. Remote beacon deployment eliminated even this marginal leverage, giving humans the ability to establish quantum networks anywhere in the galaxy, regardless of local political control. Admiral Susan Parker, representing Earth's rapidly expanding Stellar Navy, provided details about humanity's military expansion that made it clear how completely the balance of power had shifted. The Earth Defense Force now maintains permanent facilities in over 200 star systems, she announced, with quantum-linked military installations that allow for coordinated defense of human interests throughout the galaxy. The military infrastructure she described represented more than simple territorial expansion. Human forces were positioned to respond instantly to any threat anywhere in the galaxy, effectively making Earth the guarantor of galactic security, whether other civilizations wanted that protection or not. High Counselor Nemtha found herself in the unprecedented position of representing galactic interests to a species that had become more powerful than the rest of galactic civilization combined. Secretary Mitchell, she said carefully, the Council appreciates Earth's contributions to galactic development, but we must address growing concerns about the concentration of technological and military power in human hands. Secretary Mitchell's response was politely delivered but uncompromising in its implications. High Counselor, Earth understands these concerns, but we must also consider the practical realities of galactic governance in the quantum age. The technologies that make modern galactic civilization possible are human technologies maintained by human engineers and protected by human military forces. We have no intention of abusing this position, but we also cannot ignore our responsibilities. The statement marked a fundamental shift in the relationship between humanity and the rest of galactic civilization. Earth was no longer presenting itself as an equal partner seeking cooperation, but as the dominant power accepting responsibility for maintaining order in a galaxy that had become dependent on human technology. Economic Coordinator Dex Ran of the Trade Consortium provided data that demonstrated how completely human quantum networks had disrupted traditional galactic economics. Our analysis indicates that over 70% of interstellar commerce now depends on human-controlled transportation networks, he reported, his voice carrying undertones of resignation. Civilizations that attempt to maintain independence from human economic systems find themselves increasingly isolated and unable to compete in galactic markets. The economic transformation had been swift and comprehensive. Species that had initially been cautious about becoming dependent on human technology discovered that they had little choice if they wanted to remain competitive in a galaxy where their competitors could transport goods instantly across unlimited distances. Dr. Alan Cooper, Earth specialist in galactic sociology, revealed the social changes that were reshaping civilizations throughout Council space. We're observing the emergence of what we call quantum cultures, he explained. Civilizations that have adapted their social structures to take advantage of instantaneous communication and transportation across their entire territory. The cultural implications were profound. Traditional social structures that had evolved to accommodate the isolation and autonomy of distant colonies were being replaced by new forms of organization that assumed constant contact and coordination across interstellar distances. Entire civilizations were reorganizing themselves around human technological capabilities. Chief Engineer Nancy Wilson provided updates on humanity's industrial expansion that demonstrated the breathtaking scale of Earth's galactic infrastructure development. Human manufacturing networks now span over 500 star systems, she reported, with specialized production facilities that take advantage of unique planetary conditions throughout the galaxy. The industrial network she described had become the backbone of galactic manufacturing. Human quantum networks allowed for unprecedented efficiency in resource utilization and production specialization, creating an integrated galactic economy that was centered on Earth's technological infrastructure. Captain James Mitchell, commanding the USS Explorer on humanity's first extragalactic expedition, provided news that would establish Earth's position as the leader of galactic expansion into entirely new realms of space. "We have successfully established quantum beacon networks in 17 star systems in the Andromeda Galaxy," he announced, opening up an entirely new galaxy for human colonization and resource development. The achievement was stunning in its implications. While other galactic civilizations were still adapting to the revolutionary changes in their own galaxy, humanity had already begun expanding into neighboring galaxies, establishing Earth as the first truly intergalactic civilization in known history. Defense Minister Robert Adams addressed the Council's Security Committee with proposals for galactic defense coordination that made it clear how completely security arrangements had shifted in humanity's favor. Earth is prepared to assume primary responsibility for galactic defense against external threats, he announced, using quantum-linked military networks that can respond instantly to any crisis anywhere in known space. The offer was presented as a generous gesture of leadership. But the underlying reality was that humanity had already become so militarily dominant that formal arrangements were simply a matter of acknowledging existing facts. Earth's forces were already the primary guarantor of galactic security, whether other civilizations formally agreed to this arrangement or not. Elder Zixtan of the Ancient Minds, whose species had been among the founders of galactic civilization, 40,000 years earlier, spoke for many of the established powers when he addressed the assembled representatives. "We find ourselves in a galaxy that has been fundamentally transformed by human technology and human vision," he said, his voice carrying the weight of civilizations that had watched their millennium-old dominance evaporate in a matter of years. "The question we must ask ourselves is whether we can adapt to this new reality or whether we will become irrelevant to the future that humanity is creating." Council Prime Director Zethkar found himself presiding over discussions that were less about negotiating agreements between equal partners than about determining how non-human civilizations could find meaningful roles in a galaxy that was increasingly dominated by human technology, human economics, and human military power. "The Council recognizes that we have entered a new era of galactic civilization," he announced formally, "one in which humanity's technological achievements have created possibilities that extend far beyond our previous understanding of what was possible. We look forward to working with Earth to ensure that all species can benefit from these unprecedented opportunities." The diplomatic language couldn't disguise the reality that had become undeniable to everyone in the chamber. The age of human dominance wasn't approaching. It had already arrived, and the rest of galactic civilization was scrambling to find ways. 5 years after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, the transformation was complete, and even the most optimistic human planners were stunned by how thoroughly their species had come to dominate galactic civilization. The USS Federation arrived at what was now officially called the Galactic Coordination Station, carrying Earth's President Maria Santos for a ceremony that would formalize what had already become the practical reality of galactic governance. President Santos stood before an assembly that had grown to include representatives from over 3,000 different species, most of whom had been contacted and integrated into galactic civilization through human exploration efforts. The chamber itself had been expanded using human construction techniques and quantum-linked engineering systems that allowed for real-time coordination between work crews operating in different star systems. "Today marks the 5th anniversary of humanity's introduction to galactic civilization," President Santos began, her words transmitted instantly to every corner of the galaxy through quantum communication networks that had become as essential to modern life as the air that various species breathed. In that time, we have witnessed changes that no one could have predicted and achievements that have exceeded our wildest dreams. The changes she referenced were visible throughout the galaxy. Human quantum beacon networks, now connected over 10,000 star systems, creating a transportation and communication grid that made the galaxy smaller than individual planets had been before the quantum age. Travel times that had once been measured in years were now measured in minutes, and communication delays that had historically isolated distant civilizations had been eliminated entirely. Director of Galactic Development Carl Robinson provided statistics that demonstrated the scope of human influence on galactic civilization. Human-administered systems now account for 47% of galactic industrial output, he reported, while human-designed infrastructure supports over 90% of interstellar transportation and communication throughout known space. The numbers reflected a reality that had emerged gradually but inevitably as more civilizations discovered that they could not compete effectively without access to human technology and infrastructure. Species that had initially resisted integration into human-dominated systems found themselves increasingly isolated in a galaxy where their competitors enjoyed the advantages of instantaneous transportation and communication. Chief Science Advisor Jennifer Clark revealed achievements that demonstrated how human expansion had accelerated beyond the boundaries of traditional galactic civilization. Earth's exploration fleets have now established quantum beacon networks in 47 different galaxies, she announced, creating the foundation for the first truly intergalactic civilization in known history. The exploration achievements represented more than simple territorial expansion. Humanity had become the first species to treat entire galaxies as routine destinations for colonization and resource development, establishing Earth as the center of a growing intergalactic empire that dwarfed anything that had existed in previous galactic history. Admiral Patricia Thompson, commanding Earth's intergalactic defense force, provided details about humanity's military presence that made it clear how completely security arrangements had been transformed. Human military installations now provide security coverage for over 15,000 star systems across multiple galaxies, she reported, with quantum-linked response capabilities that allow for instant deployment of defensive forces anywhere in known space. The military network she described had become the backbone of galactic security, not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple reality that no other force in the universe could match the speed and effectiveness of quantum-linked human military responses. Civilizations throughout the galaxy had come to depend on human protection because no alternative existed. Economic Minister David Taylor addressed the assembly with data that showed how thoroughly human quantum networks had integrated galactic civilization into a single economic system. The Galactic Trade Network now processes over 10 trillion credits worth of commerce daily, he reported, with quantum transportation systems that allow for resource optimization and production specialization on scales that were previously impossible. The economic integration had created unprecedented prosperity throughout the galaxy, but it had also made every civilization dependent on human-controlled infrastructure for their continued economic survival. The quantum networks that enabled galactic commerce were human technology, maintained by human engineers and protected by human military forces. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, Earth's Director of Xenocultural Studies, revealed the social changes that had transformed civilizations throughout the galaxy as they adapted to the realities of the quantum age. We're observing the emergence of truly galactic cultures, she explained, with shared languages, customs, and social structures that span multiple galaxies and thousands of different species. The cultural transformation had been as profound as the technological revolution. Species that had developed their civilizations in isolation were becoming part of a unified galactic community that transcended traditional boundaries of biology, geography, and history. Human ideas about governance, economics, and social organization were spreading throughout the galaxy, not through force, but through the simple reality that they worked better than alternatives in a quantum-connected universe. High Counselor Nemtha, now serving as the Galactic Council's liaison to Earth's government rather than its leader, addressed the Assembly with reflections on how completely the balance of power had shifted. 5 years ago, humanity was an unknown species from a distant star, she said, her voice carrying a mixture of wonder and resignation. Today, human leadership has become essential to the continued functioning of galactic civilization. The transformation she described had been swift but not forced. Humanity had never demanded dominance or threatened other civilizations into submission. Instead, they had simply offered technologies and capabilities that were so superior to existing, alternatives that resistance had become pointless rather than impossible. Council Prime Director Zethkar, whose role had evolved from leading galactic civilization to helping coordinate its integration into human-dominated systems, provided a formal assessment of the changes that had occurred. The Galactic Council recognizes that we have entered an era in which human, technological, and organizational capabilities have become fundamental to the continued development of galactic civilization, he announced. We formally request that Earth assume leadership responsibilities for galactic governance, exploration, and defense. The request was a formality, since humanity had already been performing these functions for years, but it marked the official end of the old galactic order and the beginning of a new era in which Earth would be recognized as the dominant power. In known space, President Santos accepted the responsibility with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Earth accepts the trust that you place in us, she said, and we commit ourselves to using our capabilities for the benefit of all galactic civilizations. We will continue to expand the frontiers of known space, develop technologies that improve life for all species, and maintain the security that allows galactic civilization to flourish. Fleet Admiral John Parker, commanding Earth's Exploration Command, provided updates on humanity's expanding presence in the universe that demonstrated the scope of their ambitions. Human exploration fleets are currently conducting surveys in over 200 different galaxies, he reported, with plans to establish permanent quantum beacon networks throughout the local group within the next decade. The exploration timeline he described was breathtaking in its scope. Humanity was planning to map and colonize entire galactic clusters in time frames that other species would require for single-system surveys, using quantum drive technology that made intergalactic distances as manageable as the space between neighboring stars. Dr. Michael Davis, Earth's leading expert on quantum physics, revealed the next breakthrough that would further expand human capabilities. Our research teams have successfully developed quantum tunnel technology that operates across interdimensional barriers, he announced, opening up entirely new realms of space for exploration and colonization. The achievement meant that humanity was no longer limited to exploring the universe that other species knew about. Earth's scientists had found ways to access parallel dimensions and alternate realities, expanding the concept of galactic civilization to include realms of existence that no one had previously imagined. As the ceremony concluded, the assembled representatives from thousands of different species formally acknowledged what had become undeniably true. Humanity had not simply joined galactic civilization, they had fundamentally transformed it into something that transcended every previous understanding of what was possible. The galaxy was no longer a collection of isolated civilizations struggling to maintain contact across vast distances. It had become a unified community connected by quantum networks that operated at the speed of thought, protected by military forces that could respond instantly to any threat.